Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our podcast.
Today we're covering the anime movie A Silent Voice, which was recommended to us by Sylveon14.
Yes, thank you, Sylveon. Now, Shoya Ishida kept bullying a deaf classmate when he was in grade school. He got so merciless that she ended up moving away, and years later, Shoya now sets out for redemption and to befriend her.
Yes. And before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, and click notification when they post future podcasts and little pause videos.
Absolutely. Now, we had seen this advertised on Netflix, but the way that it was described, we thought it was going to be something totally different, so we didn't watch it. And then one day, Sylveon left a comment on a video that we'll read to you, and you can see in front of you. I'm making a request that not only we watch it, but because you do a podcast with us. Now, unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond our control and hers, she wasn't able to do it. So we miss you from doing this. So this particular podcast is dedicated to Sylveon as well.
Yes.
And she says, P.S. Yesterday, I saw a movie called A Silent Voice, which I loved and cried a lot, mostly because I felt it very personal due to the themes the movie has, like depression, bullying, suicide, redemption, loving and forgiving yourself. With everything that I've been through and how I've been feeling, I think you know why I felt is so identified with it. A lot of psychologists have analyzed it, so it's a movie I highly recommend for you to watch in case you haven't. And now I'm going to ask the question I never thought I would ask. Once you watch this movie and do a podcast about it, can I do the podcast with you girls? I know it's very weird that this question came from me, but I feel like it would be very interesting to do a podcast for the first time with you. And this movie is very personal and important for me to talk about it. But if you have done a podcast about it already, don't worry about it. I don't mind. Which we had, and we absolutely loved the idea. And within 10 days, we actually went and watched this movie on Netflix, and it is one of the best anime movies we've ever seen.
Yes.
We're so grateful that she not only asked us to watch it, but in describing what is going on in it, we knew it wasn't a movie about suicide and death, which is what it sounds like in the description.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful movie from beginning to end. It's very deep, and it's a movie that I think almost anyone who watches it can relate to. Things that are within it from one view or another, from one time or another in their lives. I related to it, and I'm not a teenager. You related to it, and you're not far beyond teenage years. It's just that type of excellently made movie. We've seen lots of comments on Twitter how every time movies were recommended, anime movies, this is one of them, one of the top 3. And now we understand why.
Yes. And it's very well animated. Because, we've seen lots of anime movies. Usually they say the type of animation when they do theatrical films of TV anime. But this one is just its own movie. It was based off a manga and pretty much stuck just about one-to-one. I think they may have just left out a little bit of an epilogue, which we thought they had, but they didn't, which was okay. Because the whole story is still presented to you. It doesn't feel like you lost out on anything, like they cut things out for time or anything. It felt like the entire story was told, and the message is very clear in it, whether you're in Shoya's position or the girl's position,
or any of the other students that were around. I really loved about this movie is you kept getting everyone's viewpoint that was in the movie. A lot of times you see movies and it's just from the protagonist, sometimes the antagonist. And here it was both, but also all the people that were involved with them, the family members, the students. You got everyone's view, and that's just something that's really rare. And that's why I think that anyone who watches it can relate, because you've got so many different viewpoints and so many different ways things are being seen, and you love how in the end there is a resolution. It's not the way you thought it would be, and we're happy it didn't turn out the way it looked like it was going to turn, but the way that it was resolved and the ending is an excellent ending for this movie.
Yes. And another thing to point out is that, it had been years since this event we had mentioned in the description of it. And when he finds her,
Yeah, we should say, he was, you said grade school, and he was much younger when he did these
Right.
things.
Right. So years later, he ends up actually finding her, and at first you think it's an accident, but a lot of things are kind of revealed, like these events were meant to happen like this, and everyone will grow from it. So with that, he starts hanging out with her again, and it's more little by little of him getting to know her. He's not trying to force himself on her or anything, or trying too hard. He's genuinely doing his best to, to understand and to practice. He's even taking sign language classes, and he's doing his best to improve because he has been constantly having that emotion where he feels like he may not even deserve to be forgiven.
What I do thought was a little bit of fun they put in it. When he got older, Shoya had a glow up. I'm like, yeah, this girl's not gonna see this guy and not want to deal with him. They made it like a little tempting for her. Yeah, he did this and the other, but look at him now.
Like what? Like what message is this?
And of course, the type of person that it was communicated she was, you knew that at some point she was gonna be able to deal with him and forgive him. And then you find out, of course, as I said, because of the blow up, she had feelings toward him. And he's like a lot of characters we see that are kind of dull and don't get it. Yeah, he was clueless.
Yeah.
And she was so upset and so just crying and upset because he didn't realize that, she'd forgotten the rest of the stuff that happened, and she was looking at him now and how she was feeling toward him. And one part that was really wonderful and that we personally haven't seen in another anime or animated movie is her sister was in here, and it's her younger sister, but she's defending her like she's a bigger sister.
Yes.
And she looks androgynous so first she tells Shoya she's her boyfriend. And he backs off like, oh, okay. And she's like, why did you do that? And you're stunned because at first you don't know, and then you finally like, oh, okay. So it was really sweet that her sister's like, you're not going to mess with my sister. I'm going to make sure he never hurts you again. Because soon as she saw him, she knew who he was. When he came back to see her again, and he brought flowers, and it's like, oh,
and bread.
Yes. And somehow she knew this was him. And she's like, no. I want to make sure I'm a boyfriend.
I was like, what? Because that was so confused. I was like, wait, when did that happen? And it's like, oh my gosh.
And then later, which I don't think is too much to reveal, she doesn't want to go home, and he sees her, and then she has to tell him, well, I'm actually her sister. And he takes her home with him so that she's not out by herself in the street.
Yeah.
And that's when the story really unfolds, and you begin to see all the elements that Sylviane spoke of redemption and forgiveness and depression and all these things. And it's really just a beautiful movie.
Yes. And another thing to point out before we get to a few more of the characters is that this stands out from other movies, whether anime or Western or otherwise, when they handle this type of topic. When we see so far in anime, we've seen two examples where a person's going through these thoughts and feelings, and the friends slowly find out and help them or save them before they do the act. However, when we see other portrayals of this in other media, unfortunately, majority of the time it goes a darker path, and it's more after the incident is done and the people are grieving. So it was,
for example, like the manga and the anime Orange.
Right. And that one had a very positive ending still, but when you see in other places, like I said, mostly it's after it's already done, and then the people are kind of just recovering from that. And
like, for example, I Want to Eat Your Pancreas.
Right. So it was very refreshing to see that this didn't happen. It happens to nobody. There are close calls, but they still had each other, and they grow, they get better, and they never want to do that again. And it's very refreshing and very great to see that, because especially for ones who have had these feelings or thoughts, no matter what age, they see that and they know, this is not worth it. You have people that care about you. Someone cares about you. This will not solve anything doing this. So it was very great to see that it was the best possible outcome, and everybody, instead of being in sorrow, everyone was in joy by the end of it.
I also like that the parents were involved in these movies. Sometimes they're left out. Sometimes it looks like the kid is living by themselves, and they're not. But because they don't have the adults involved or as a part of their lives and them being interested in what's going on in their lives, it doesn't seem that way. But in here, they didn't do that, and I really, really like that on both sides. The moms were very concerned and into their kids and listening to their children, caring how they felt. And I really like that, because for me, it's just become a trope where you have the parents don't care. And I know that this does happen for a lot of people, and I'm so sorry about that, but I do sometimes want to see where you've got, as you said, people around that care, including parents that care, and that can be reflected, and you can see them working out things amongst themselves and between each other, which is really what sometimes you need to see, as you said, in order to see that it's not so bleak and that there could be a bright spot in your life as well.
Right.
I really liked how both Shoya and, I'm going to say his girlfriend, had
well,
their
pretty
own,
much is what she ends up being by the end.
they
So
had their own issues they were working through. And in one instance, they were like polar opposites. But in some points, they actually were the same, where they met in the middle. And each one grew to understand how the other one was feeling. And the climax, which was like a double fold climax.
Yeah.
And we're not going to even spoil it for you, because that would just ruin the movie. It's your clutch your pearls, grab your chest, bite your nails. You were just like upset and on edge and wondering, please don't let this turn out this way. Not only for one character, but for two characters.
Right.
And again, as you said, it's just really well written, well done, and it's something that anyone of any age, any gender, any nationality, anything can find a way to identify, relate to, and especially empathize with the characters. And not only just the victim in this case, but also the person who's doing the bullying.
Right.
So it's just a brilliant movie.
Right. And another thing is that for Shoya, there's this thing throughout the film where I guess it's like an emotional wall, like kind of blocking people out, because throughout the film, majority of characters that are literally extras or start off as extras have X's on them, like you're literally supposed to ignore them, but you kind of, the viewer can't help but see it because it's kind of everywhere. But for Shoya, it's sort of just people he blocks out and doesn't interact with. But then when he helps at least one kid who looks like a cross between Deku and Mineta, and he becomes his friend, the X falls off. And when he starts getting closer to people and gathering friends, the people he's been blocking out starts falling away, and he starts having friends, and it starts growing. You can tell that the scenery and everything starts to change once he starts being more open, and this guy just claims him as his best friend.
And it was wonderful. I loved it because it also shows you that sometimes friendships start in the most unlikely places with the most unlikely people. And you never would have thought these two would have ever been together and being friends.
Right.
It did help that this guy was like resilient, and no matter what you did, he got right back up. You could not shoot him down. That was a wonderful part of his personality.
Yes.
If it hadn't been for that, they never would have been friends.
Yes.
And he just persisted and endured, and was like, I'm your friend. And as you said, finally that wall comes down and he understands, and it's wonderful to see that friendship grow as well.
Yes.
So Sylvian, thank you so much for recommending this. We really absolutely love this, and again, it's one of our top favorite anime movies of all time now. Looking forward to seeing more. If there are any more you'd like to recommend to us as well as other listeners, let us know in the comments below. And we look forward to, in the future, at some point, being able to do a podcast with you on another movie that's made such a difference for you in your life and you recommend. And lastly, since you are not able to be on the podcast with us, feel free to leave an extended comment below, so that anyone who watches this podcast will be able to read it, because we will pin it so that it will be the first thing that people see.
So your viewpoint is still be listed on the video.
Absolutely.
So be sure to like, subscribe, and click notification for the episodes of future podcasts and other pause videos.
Yes, and if you haven't seen A Silent Voice, it's available on Netflix to watch in its entirety. And if you have seen A Silent Voice, let us know what you think in the comments. Did it make that much of an impression on you? How did you relate? Which character did you identify with and were able to relate to? Are there other movies like this you've watched that you can recommend to us? And we watch them as well. Let us know in the comments also.
Right. So, thank you so much for watching. I'm Oscar Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment and Sylvian14.
Yes. Have a toontastic day.
Peace.